Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 75, The Junior Brother and the Detour to Save the Nation. Yosano Akiko felt like this scene was truly a nightmare repeating itself. Back when she was still in the military, although she could save soldiers from near death with her ability, she could do nothing for their mental state, watching as each soldier, unable to die, slowly fell into despair. She refused to continue treatment, but Mori Ogai, who was also in the military at that time, forced her to use her ability again by shooting a soldier in front of her, and she, unable to bear watching him die, went against his wishes and saved him again. In the end, she went from being beloved by everyone, the angel of healing, to the angel of death, and those who liked her even resorted to suicide to escape her. And now, once again, someone who originally didn't need it ended up gravely injured because of her ability. Yosano-san. Kudo Shinichi, trying his best to administer first aid, turned to her and shouted, "Can you save him? Please, save him." Yosano Akiko snapped out of the nightmare, bit her lip, and quickly stepped forward to use her ability. The next moment, Komaeda Nagito's breathing stabilized, and the speed at which the pool of blood beneath him spread also slowed in just a few seconds. Yosano Akiko. So he was really on the verge of death just now. Her ability only worked when the person was near death, and this guy had really been cruel enough to himself. Komaeda Nagito opened his eyes, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at the shocked and flustered Kudo Shinichi, and said awkwardly, "Sorry, did I scare you?" Kudo Shinichi snapped back to reality and said, "You just got saved, and that's all you have to say." Komaeda Nagito thought for a few seconds and then smiled brightly. "It looks like your mental state is pretty good. I underestimated you, Kudo-kun." As expected from someone determined to become a great detective, what just happened must have seemed like a minor situation to you, right? Everyone. Kudo Shinichi was too angry to speak. "Is that the point here? Can't you worry about yourself for once?" Komaeda Nagito was still checking his own body. He unwrapped the bandages around his head, stood up, moved his legs, pressed on his ribs, and looked pleasantly surprised. Yosano-san's ability really is amazing. I've completely recovered. With such a minor injury, it was totally unnecessary to use her ability on me. I understand now. Letting it heal naturally would have taken 2 or 3 months and still bothered Yosano-san. How inconsiderate of me. Yosano Akiko was instantly too angry to speak. It had nothing to do with the severity of the injury. The reason she refused just now wasn't because this guy's injury was too minor. What happened here? Probably drawn by the gunshot, Armed Detective Agency President Fukuzawa Yukichi came out of his office and hurried over, falling into silence as he faced the scene that looked like a crime scene. Kunikida Dalpo finally calmed down after the shocking events. He quietly pulled Kudo Shinichi aside and whispered, "Your senpai." Halfway through, Kunikida Dalpo didn't know what to say because the words that first came to his mind weren't exactly polite. Has a mental issue, has some problem in his head. Fortunately, Kudo Shinichi was good at reading faces, and when he saw Kunikida Dalpo's slightly troubled expression, he immediately understood. He replied quietly, "He was always like that, but not this extreme." Kunikida Dalpo nodded deeply, indicating that he understood. Simply put, he was never normal, but this time he'd gone exceptionally mad. At least he wasn't driven insane by being at the Armed Detective Agency. Meanwhile, Komaeda Nagito was explaining the situation to Fukuzawa Yukichi. "Sorry, it's all my fault. To make Yosano-san use her precious ability on something trivial, I shot myself. Ahaha, sorry for causing trouble." Fukuzawa Yukichi nodded grimly. "Please don't do that again. Life only comes once, such recklessness is truly too much." President Edogawa Ranpo, who had gone to get snacks but probably couldn't eat after all this, had somehow turned back. He looked around near the sofa, picked something up, and ran over to Fukuzawa Yukichi, excitedly saying, "Look at this. Ranpo, I'm in the middle of a conversation." Fukuzawa Yukichi sighed, gave Komaeda Nagito an apologetic look, and then lowered his head to see what Ranpo was showing him. This is... Huh? Fukuzawa Yukichi's eyes suddenly changed. It was a blood-stained piece of paper, with handwriting he was very familiar with, and it bore the signature of Natsume Soseki. Fukuzawa Yukichi, Ranpo, where did you pick this up? Why was sensei's signature here? Edogawa Ranpo said, on the sofa, it was this guy. Komaeda Nagito. Fukuzawa Yukichi coughed, said a few reassuring words to the visibly upset Yosano Akiko, telling her to take a break, then dismissed Kunikita Dalpo and Kudo Shinichi, saying he'd handle this himself. Since the sofa was now a mess, no one could sit there, and the topic ahead wasn't suitable for a semi-public space like this, Fukuzawa Yukichi directly invited Komaeda Nagito to his office for a private conversation. Edogawa Ranpo naturally followed along. Fukuzawa Yukichi glanced at Ranpo Edogawa and couldn't help but ask, did you predict this would happen? No, Edogawa Ranpo looked a bit frustrated as he slouched in front of Fukuzawa Yukichi. He must have done it on a whim. Besides, I haven't even put my glasses on. Great Detective Ranpo wasn't even being serious. At the time, his attention was caught by the mysterious informant contacting Komaeda Nagito. He was more interested in finding out who was investigating Yosano Akiko, what they planned to use Komaeda Nagito for, and what connection they had with Mimic. Compared to these mysteries, Komaeda Nagito held no interest for Edogawa Ranpo. Fukuzawa Yukichi wasn't blaming Edogawa Ranpo. Though the exchange had been brief, he had noticed Komaeda Nagito's peculiar behavior. Acting without any prompting, only coming by to see the commotion, it was normal for Ranpo to overlook something when he wasn't being serious. After all, Ranpo didn't possess some supernatural ability, he just had observation and information synthesis abilities far beyond the average person. Without any clues, it wasn't possible to deduce anything. Besides, if this incident could make Ranpo take things seriously, it might be worth it. After entering the office, Fukuzawa Yukichi first invited Komaeda Nagito to sit, then made tea, exchanged a few pleasantries, and returned to the topic that had been interrupted. He once again expressed his disapproval of Komaeda Nagito's behavior, which nearly put Edogawa Ranpo to sleep, and finally got to the point. Ranpo found this piece of paper on the sofa. Fukuzawa Yukichi flattened the paper, placed it on the table, and pushed it toward Komaeda Nagito with his finger. Is this yours? Komaeda Nagito recognized it at a glance. He touched his neck and realized his charm had gone missing. At the beginning of this year, he had been dragged to visit a shrine by Kudo Shinichi and had gotten a charm. After returning home, he put the precious signed paper inside and had carried it with him ever since. When he aimed the gun at himself just now, did he accidentally break the string holding the charm? The likelihood was high, but Komaeda Nagito didn't dwell on it. He just smiled and admitted, yes, it's mine. Thank you for picking it up. Fukuzawa Yukichi watched as he carefully retrieved the paper and calmly asked, do you know Natsume Soseki-sensei? His signature is quite rare. Komaeda Nagito's smile was polite. President Fukuzawa, what exactly do you want to know? Although Fukuzawa Yukichi didn't seem suspicious, Komaeda Nagito felt it wasn't appropriate to casually share information about Natsume-sensei. However, just at that moment, Komaeda Nagito's phone suddenly rang. He looked at the caller ID and realized it was Natsume Soseki. Earlier, when he was in the elevator, he had sent an email to Natsume-sensei about the strange encounter with Dostoevsky, thinking sensei would see it by evening. He hadn't expected such a quick response, let alone a direct call. Fukuzawa Yukichi misunderstood Komaeda Nagito's hesitation and kindly said, do you need me to step outside? Komaeda Nagito quickly shook his head. This is your office, how could I ask you to leave? I'll just step out. But just as Komaeda Nagito stood up and took 2 steps, his phone stopped vibrating. The next moment, Fukuzawa Yukichi's phone started ringing. Edogawa Ranpo, who had somehow put on his glasses without anyone noticing, said excitedly, President, answer it. No need to leave. Fukuzawa Yukichi glanced at the unfamiliar number and brought the phone to his ear. Hello, this is the Armed Detective Agency. Sensei. Komaeda Nagito and Edogawa Ranpo both focused their gazes on Fukuzawa Yukichi. It was. Right, he was right in front of me, doing what, exactly? Fukuzawa Yukichi was silent for a moment, shot himself in the head. Yosano treated it. He's fine now. Fukuzawa Yukichi handed the phone to Komaeda Nagito, his gaze somewhat complicated. Sensei wants to speak with you. Komaeda Nagito nodded and took the phone. Sensei. Why did you run off to commit suicide, huh? Natsume Soseki's voice rang clearly in Komaeda Nagito's ear, full of energy. Just survived the mimic ordeal yesterday, felt it wasn't dramatic enough or something? Today you went off to die. Komaeda Nagito coughed lightly. Sensei, I wasn't trying to die. I trust Dr. Yosano's abilities. Shut your mouth, Natsume Soseki said angrily, learning to throw a tantrum, are we? Fine, let's put that aside for now. Next time a stranger gives you something, don't just take it naively. What if it's poisoned or has some strange ability that gets triggered, huh? I was wrong. Komaeda Nagito admitted without hesitation, though Natsume Soseki on the other end of the line couldn't see his unrepentant expression, only hearing his sincere voice. However, it's my fault that Sensei has to waste his precious time on a useless person like me. Your valuable time should be spent on more important things. Natsume Soseki found it difficult to gauge the real meaning behind Komaeda's sarcastic words, despite his improved skills at deciphering such speech. Was this complaint about his rambling? Or was it a subtle hint telling him not to waste time on him and go focus on his own business instead? When Komaeda Nagito started running his sharp tongue, he truly showed no regard for rank or status. Back then, he even secretly criticized Natsume's plan for being poorly made and took it upon himself to revise it. It left Natsume Soseki at a loss for words. But Natsume Soseki had learned a thing or two about dealing with such situations. This old man is indeed doing something important right now. Too bad the rat managed to slip away. Since you're at the Armed Detective Agency now, if any Russian intelligence comes up, just tell your senior directly. I've already given my instructions. Is President Fukuzawa also one of Sensei's students? As expected of Natsume Sensei, all your students are extraordinary. You can tell at a glance they're not ordinary people. It almost makes me feel embarrassed to be mixed in among them. Natsume Soseki took a deep breath. No need for embarrassment, just fix that attitude of yours. If you were really that self-effacing, you wouldn't be so good at taking matters into your own hands. Now give the phone back to your senior. Komaeda Nagito obediently handed the phone back. It was evident that Fukuzawa Yukichi rarely received a direct call from Natsume Soseki, as he seemed surprised and a bit bewildered. Whatever Natsume Soseki said to him, he responded seriously, and after a long while, ended the call. After putting down the phone, Fukuzawa Yukichi silently turned his gaze towards Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda Nagito had an obedient expression. Senior. Fukuzawa Yukichi. He felt a bit of a stomachache coming on. The first time they met, this junior had shown up drenched in blood, seeming quite unhinged. Then he took the call and heard the conversation between this junior and Natsume Sensei. Their odd manner of speaking was confusing in a different way compared to Ranpo. In the end, this guy became his junior. Since he was underage and full of dangerous thoughts, Natsume Sensei asked Fukuzawa to keep an eye on him. Fukuzawa Yukichi felt a bit weary. He recalled Komaeda Nagito's words on the phone just now and couldn't help but think, perhaps disrespectfully, did Natsume Sensei find this junior troublesome, deciding that, since he'd managed with Ranpo, maybe he could handle another? No, Natsume Sensei must have had some deeper reason for making this arrangement. Natsume Sensei said if you have any ideas, you should discuss them with me first. Fukuzawa Yukichi, entrusted by Natsume Sensei, naturally took his task seriously. I understand your injuries have been treated, but that wasn't your original purpose, was it? Komaeda Nagito nodded. I want to know the location of the mimic headquarters. Edogawa Ranpo interjected angrily from the side, he plans to take on Mimic by himself. Though Edogawa Ranpo hadn't heard Natsume Soseki's conversation, he could guess by Fukuzawa's response. Natsume Soseki was asking Fukuzawa to look out for Komaeda Nagito. Edogawa Ranpo wasn't about to argue with the president's decision, but he was annoyed. Knowing Komaeda Nagito's personality, Fukuzawa Yukichi would surely end up worrying a lot, meaning less time for Ranpo, which made him a bit jealous. Fukuzawa Yukichi, hearing Ranpo's words, immediately became serious. You don't have an ability, and they are a fully armed group. What could you possibly do there? Leave it to the Port Mafia, they've already negotiated with the Special Division. It's only a matter of time before they deal with them. We have to wait for the Port Mafia's gravity manipulator to return. Edogawa Ranpo adjusted his glasses, sarcastically commenting, but that might take a while. If push comes to shove, Mori Ogai might agree to bring him back. You heard that. Fukuzawa Yukichi relaxed a bit. You don't need to do anything, just wait. Don't make sensei worry. Komaeda Nagito, who had been calmly observing Fukuzawa Yukichi, showed no sign of the previous madness that drove him to point a gun at himself. Seeing how serious Fukuzawa Yukichi was in stopping him, he knew his main objective was unattainable this time. Ha! How unfortunate. Still, his body was fully healed now, which was an unexpected joy. He hadn't thought he'd regain mobility so quickly. As President Fukuzawa rejected his request, there was no need to push further. Komaeda Nagito smiled. I see, my apologies for troubling you, senior. It seems I also scared your staff. Unfortunately, I didn't bring anything to make amends. I wonder if Dr. Yosano will forgive me. I'll speak with Yosano. Fukuzawa Yukichi's expression clearly suggested he was ready to end this conversation. Go home and rest. Though your body is healed, the mental strain from Yosano's treatment also requires some recuperation. By the way, your weapon. Fukuzawa hesitated for a moment before sighing. Keep it for self-defense. Though carrying a gun was illegal, Natsume-sensei had mentioned that a dangerous Russian had been after this junior lately, and Fukuzawa Yukichi felt safer knowing Komaeda Nagito had some protection. Natsume-sensei hadn't objected, after all. As long as Yosano Akiko wasn't around, hopefully, he wouldn't end up pointing it at himself again. This kind of compromise, Fukuzawa Yukichi could handle. Ha ha ha, thank you, senior. I only managed to pick up this one gun. If it were confiscated, I wouldn't know where to find another. Komaeda Nagito said cheerfully, then I'll take my leave for now. Fukuzawa Yukichi. Why was Yokohama still in such chaos that even regular citizens could just pick up weapons anywhere? How was Mori Ogai managing things? Wait. Fukuzawa Yukichi frowned. You shouldn't go out like this. Let me get you a coat to cover up. Komaeda Nagito looked down at himself, covered in blood, and finally seemed to realize, blinking in sudden awareness. You're right, haha, I forgot. Fukuzawa Yukichi. How could anyone forget something like that? Natsume-sensei, your standards for accepting disciples are getting stranger. Fukuzawa Yukichi sorrowfully went out to borrow a coat for Komaeda Nagito from a staff member, ensuring that he wouldn't scare anyone. He escorted him all the way to the elevator, making sure he didn't engage with anyone else to avoid further incidents. Komaeda Nagito had limped in, but now he left briskly, even leaving his crutch behind in the armed detective agency, confusing the cafe waiter downstairs who delivered the letter to him. Standing by the roadside waiting for a taxi, Komaeda Nagito's mind wasn't idle as he considered what to do next. From what his senior had said, leaving it to the Port Mafia wouldn't work. Even Edogawa Ranpo had mentioned that Mori Ogai wouldn't be calling back the gravity manipulator anytime soon. This person seemed to be the Mafia's most powerful fighter. Without his return, according to Dazaikuin, there was no way to quickly deal with Mimic with the available forces in Yokohama. If that was the case, Oda-san wouldn't be able to write in peace. Even if he resigned to write novels, Mimic wouldn't let him go. If he remembered correctly, next week was Oda-san's manuscript deadline. If he could make it in time, he might be eligible for a prestigious literary award. The editor was hopeful, and Oda-san had shared the good news with him. Oda-san's progress was already delayed by overtime work recently, and now, with this situation, there's no way to calm his mind, so they didn't bring it up again. However, it's not entirely hopeless. This time, Oda-san's story features an assassin as the protagonist, supposedly because he's continuing that unfinished novel with no ending. He thinks what he's going through these past 2 days should be able to give him plenty of inspiration. If only he could focus on his writing during this whole period. Just then, a taxi pulled up, and Komaeda Nagito naturally got in, gave the address, and then called Edgar Allan Poe. Perhaps Edgar Allan Poe was somewhat concerned about the outcome of Komaeda Nagito's visit to the armed detective agency, as the phone call connected after just a few rings. "Pokuin," Komaeda Nagito said in a tone filled with regret. "I've just returned from the armed detective agency. Unfortunately, Ranpo-san couldn't give me an answer for my request. I did meet with Ranpo-san, yes, and he did look through the information, but in the end, he just returned the phone to me. Even for 100 million, he wouldn't take the case." Edgar Allan Poe, sounding a little confused but also intrigued, said, "How could that be?" "I know, Pokuin. You've been preparing to challenge Ranpo-san lately, doing your best to get ready. I didn't want to bother you. But I have no choice now. I can only ask for your help." Komaeda Nagito spoke in a hopeful tone. "Pokuin, could you help me look into whether it's possible to find their headquarters? The information is just too complicated." "We can try. Send me the information." Edgar Allan Poe was tempted. Could it be that he had a chance to challenge Ranpo indirectly again? He put aside the novel he was revising for now. With an opportunity for a rematch, there was no need to rush the writing, and any delays in Fitzgerald's task wouldn't be his problem. It was a matter of intelligence. Komaeda Nagito promptly shared the information with Edgar Allan Poe. Hopefully, some good news would come out of it, otherwise, he honestly didn't know what else to do. The same intel might be able to get an answer out of Dazai-kun, but Dazai-kun could certainly figure out what he was up to and would intervene, so he needed to keep it a secret from Dazai-kun. "I understand Dazai-kun's feelings. But still, I'm really quite upset." Komaeda Nagito put away his phone, sighed, and muttered to himself, "This is such a crucial work. Oda-san has to be able to write it properly, but Dazai-kun's restrictions are just too much." After the call ended and the message was sent, Komaeda Nagito finally realized that something was off. The desolate scenery outside the window didn't look like the road leading to his home. "Driver-san, this road doesn't seem quite right, does it?" The driver pulled out a gun, didn't turn around, and gestured towards Komaeda Nagito. "No calls to the police, hand me your phone, and stay quiet. Otherwise, I might shoot without aiming properly." Komaeda Nagito casually threw the phone toward the front seat. "Ah, a kidnapping, huh? It's been a while. It feels kind of nostalgic." "Driver." Although the driver felt something was off, he was reassured when he saw that Komaeda Nagito truly had no intention of resisting. He had overheard something about 100 million yen commission on the phone and thought he must have struck gold by pure chance. This kid was loaded. Originally, he'd only planned to take a regular passenger, but letting a rich kid go like this would be a waste. Despite his lack of preparation, dealing with a young kid didn't require much. A bit of intimidation would do. Sure enough, it seemed like the kid had plenty of experience with being kidnapped, judging by how calmly he was cooperating. This should go smoothly, the driver thought. By the time Komaeda Nagito realized what was happening, they were almost at the driver's destination. In under a minute, the driver parked the car directly inside a warehouse, pointing his gun at Komaeda Nagito. "Get out!" Komaeda Nagito raised his hands and got out of the car, taking a look around the warehouse. "Mind if I ask, what's in those crates?" The driver impatiently pulled some rope from the trunk. "Bombs. If you're scared, just stay honest and quiet. How much do you think your parents could pay as ransom if you could easily offer 100 million? Give me an estimate first." However, Komaeda Nagito's attention was entirely captured by the first thing he heard. Bombs, huh? Ah, no wonder my luck is so bad today. Ha ha ha, turns out it's for this. I understand now. I really am quite lucky. The driver got goosebumps from the strange laughter and shouted, "Shut up. Stay quiet and answer me. Actually, I've got a bit of cash on me right now. Mind if I take it out? I hope this could buy me a bit of leniency while you tie me up. Don't try anything funny. I'm watching you." The driver held the rope in one hand and the gun in the other, moving towards Komaeda Nagito. "Where's the money?" Komaeda Nagito made a show of unbuttoning his coat while reaching inside its inner pocket. Suddenly, the driver noticed bloodstains on the white shirt beneath. The blood had dried, giving it a duller color, but people like him, with his experience, could recognize blood when they saw it. Especially since the coat was now open, he could faintly smell the metallic tang of blood even from a distance. The driver finally realized that something was wrong. Who are you really?" He saw Komaeda Nagito smiling as he pulled a loaded handgun from his pocket, pointing it straight at the driver. "I'd advise against making a move. I see you haven't disengaged the safety, so if we shoot, I'll definitely be faster." Driver. Who on earth did I kidnap here? Chapter 75 End.